All right, we're off.
That was very
Enjoying
full.
my nice zombie dust from the land of Indiana.
It's a good, I think I've had that before. You said it's brewed in Indiana?
Yeah, Three Floyds Brewery. I don't know
Oh, okay.
exactly in Indiana, but it's really
Yeah,
solid. One of
nice.
my favorites.
I'm sure our friend Brian would be able to tell us. We'll ask him later. But
But yeah,
so
June 15th, baby.
what were you telling me before we started recording about what would the first show have been?
Probably coming up here Thursday-ish sometime. The Detroit has been, I believe, the inaugural show for the last couple seasons, kicking it off.
Yeah, I hadn't
And
even
yeah, we'd be right around the corner if we were on normal operating procedures, but we're not.
I feel like I'm a bad drum corps fan. I hadn't even thought that maybe the season should have been starting in a couple days until we were talking like for 2 minutes right before we started this. I feel bad.
I'm sure when it hits, a bunch of people will start posting nostalgic videos of like, oh, this was our first show of the summer. Look how terrible we were at the first show, because most people are, but it's all
Man.
good.
First shows are really bad. Really bad. I think
I
most
don't
people are
even
just
remember
happy
mine,
to get
thankfully.
through that first performance. Especially rookies. Like you're excited, you're nervous, but like the first show you kind of like black out. Or at least I kind of did a little bit.
I don't remember. Couldn't tell you.
We'll just
I was
go with
probably
you did.
just like in the zone, like, don't screw up, don't screw up,
Yeah.
don't screw up.
And then inevitably everybody in the corps screws up 5 times minimum.
But yeah, there we are. We're just got to make do.
Yep.
Ride the summer out.
So, before we get into today's guest, welcome everyone to the Aged Out podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Fantini, and as always, with me is.
Evan Worrell.
And before we let him introduce himself, or let Evan do his little intro before he introduces himself, make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, like, comment on the video, follow us on Facebook and Instagram so you don't miss any updates for the podcast and postings of new episodes. And lastly, not lastly, almost forgot, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe there if you prefer them over YouTube, and hit us up on patreon.com/agedoutpodcast if you want to support us financially. So now that that's out of the way, without further ado, Evan, take it away and let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, so the guy joining us today actually was there for my first ever drum corps show, teaching me. We spent many hours over a couple summers sharing sweat and sunscreen and bug bites and whatever else you go through during the season of tour. But welcome our guest and a friend of mine, former instructor Zach Schlicher. What's up, dude?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's good, man. We're just, making the best of it. That's all we can do, I guess.
Trying to
Yeah,
survive quarantine
that's right.
like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Zach's
Yeah.
repping his Adidas gear, which we'll get into. It's like a sponsor. We got to get you sponsored for Adidas. So always looking fly. But yeah, man, like, I guess this is never a conversation that we've had, even though like I spent 2 whole summers with you. It's always kind of mostly business as usual and the occasional joking around here and there. But kind of take us through, man, and then we'll get caught up of where you started. I know you're from Pennsylvania, a town called Yardley,
That's right.
correct?
Yeah, Yardley, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm.
So how were you introduced into the marching band world and music and kind of indoctrinated into this craziness?
Yeah, well, and I'll try to keep this under 30 minutes as we spoke before. No, I mean, I feel like one of my first memories of just a marching band in general was as a really young kid. My dad took me to a high school football game, and it was the high school that he actually went to, which then I went to. And when we got to the football game, the stadium was the kind of stadium you like walk underneath and then you come up from underneath into the stadium. And
That's
we
cool.
just so happened to come up. Yeah, we just so happened to come up into the section that was right next to the marching band, and right at the bottom of the stands, right when you come out of that little, kind of staircase coming up to the bottom level there, the drum line was right there. So it was like immediately something that I saw upon kind of entering the stadium. And of course, and you guys know when you hear a drum line or you hear a band, like there's obviously a certain kind of sound. And also, especially with the drums, like the impact of the instrument, like you can feel it in your chest cavity.
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling that, as a little kid and seeing what was causing that and just being completely enamored with it. And I think from that moment on, and I might have been, I honestly don't know how old I was. I might have been 4 or 5, maybe 6, but it was really young. And I think from that moment on, I was just kind of really just like into the drums, you know? So, you know, as a really young kid, you know, kind of growing up in the area, Yardley, Pennsylvania, in the school district, Pennsbury School District, we would kind of go to the football games, you know, to watch football, but also like I was kind of going to watch the marching band, you know, and I had an older sister, a couple of years older than me. So, you know, we were kind of always just, you know, doing school things and, you know, being involved. And I knew that, you know, I wanted to be in the marching band. So then I think it was like maybe 4th grade is when, you know, the music teachers kind of come around to the elementary schools and kind of, you know, figure out like
who's
what
interested
kids want to do. Yeah, who's interested, and they do some little exercises, you know, to kind of figure out what instrument you might want to play. And I remember kind of being in the hallway with who was then my drum teacher, you know, throughout middle school and high school, and we were kind of just doing some like basic like almost like Stomp, like the Broadway show Stomp. Like
yeah
stomping our feet and clapping our hands and kind of making up some different little rhythms, you know, just some physical body drumming kind of stuff. Nothing too crazy, but, you know, they just kind of see like, okay, can you keep a beat? Can you kind of call and respond? You know, some simple things. And I think, you know, that kind of got me going into percussion in the school system back where I'm from. And then, you know, as you go through the music program, at least at my school, you know, you had concert bands and jazz bands. And obviously once you got to the high school, they had the marching band. And that was really what I was really, you know, looking forward to. So, you know, did all the concert bands and the jazz bands and the honor bands in middle school. And then once I got into my freshman year, I auditioned for the drum line and I tried out for the snare line and made it, which was pretty cool. I think, you know, if you're a freshman and you make the snare line anywhere, I mean, obviously some drum lines in high school are better than others, but, you know, I think that's kind of a cool thing, you know, as a rookie, you know, to high school to kind of be in the flat drum section or, you know, just play the instrument you want to play. Then you're in there with the older kids. So that was kind of neat. And then I did marching band for 4 years. And during that time, I remember my first band camp for my freshman year, we were having like a drumline sectional at the drum captain or the section leader's house. And he popped in DCI 1995 finals. So this is my first memory of, at least that I can, and I kind of have a little tangent. That's my first memory, but like, this is my first memory of like watching drum corps and realizing what it was. Little tangent, I guess, is like, my parents actually later told me this, but like back in like the 80s, they somehow randomly had drum corps on PBS and I saw it. So I had seen it before, but it was that freshman year in high school band camp when I really kind of understood what it was. And, you know, it kind of gave me like another thing to look forward to or to like aspire to kind of be a part of, you know, once high school was over. And at the time, I didn't even realize. I mean, I saw those videos and I was like, oh my gosh, like, look at these people. They're crazy. Like, they're so good. And I didn't realize that they were, you know, high school and college age kids that weren't that much older than I was.
Especially hidden under the shake, because it kind of takes like that just level playing field. They just look like machines out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, it was just really kind of cool to see that. And I remember borrowing that videotape from him and like, you know, almost wearing it out. But that kind of was the year that kind of got me going, I guess, was my freshman year, which was 1997, 1998 was my freshman year in high school. So I did the marching band thing. I played snare actually my freshman year. And then my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I played tenors, which I don't know how many people know that, but
fun fact.
I do have a little
it.
bit of tenor experience. Actually, my senior year, I was the only tenor player, and I just like made up parts. I feel like at every show. I mean,
dude, that's the best. They can't call you out, man.
I know.
Solo action.
So yeah, that was my start. You know, as a young kid, and of course pots and pans when I was a little baby. But you know, just seeing the marching band as a little kid and kind of getting hooked, and then going through the school program and doing percussion. I took piano lessons during that time as well. Yeah. And
Did
then
you
drum
take
corps.
any private lessons throughout high school or anything like that?
Yeah, I did. Nothing. I never really had, like a marching specialist teaching me. I mean, like my percussion teacher, was kind of focused on. We spent a lot of time on drum set, and I certainly learned my rudiments. But like my high school was never really known for the marching program. I mean, the marching band was decent. I actually don't follow too much. I'm not sure what kind of condition they're in these days, but they were decent. And, the musicianship was always pretty good, but the style of show was nothing like what you'd see a drum corps do, or, a group with Bands of America or even WGI. It's just a completely different kind of style of band. And the program was much more known for the jazz programs. So I spent a lot of time, doing jazz and being in the jazz ensembles and doing this festival and that festival and, traveling to kind of do that thing. But I did take private lessons, all the way through. I want to say I maybe started private lessons in like 5th or 6th grade, and then went all the way through my senior year with the same teacher the whole time. So Joe D'Alessandro, he always used to say, "Talk is cheap." And I'm sure I maybe said that to you at one point, because I know I just said it this morning to a private lesson student.
Probably. I'm sure
true.
that you did. I mean, it is. And plus, like, a lot of the things that I said are probably regurgitations of things that you or Lee or Tim Jackson or the people that taught me said. I'm just like filtering it through. So.
Yeah, like the amount of knowledge that you gain from, just one individual, much less, all of the people you've ever worked with. I mean, I'd like to kind of, like, I'm my own self, but like, having learned from guys like Tom Hannum and Tom Ongst and Colin McNutt and Lee Bettis, and, then kind of getting to work with different people, Scott Johnson, and, just you keep kind of going with the list of people and they become your colleagues, later in life. It's just, there's definitely phrases and quotes. And of course with Hannum, he's one of the most quotable percussion guys I know.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's all about who you spent your time with and kind of pulling the good stuff and applying it to what you do. So
sure.
What's the most quotable Hannum thing? What's his most famous quote? I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit.
Well, I'm gonna say the quote, but then it drops off, because then you could fill it in with a number of, like, anything after this. So the quote is this: it's, "Fellas," and then you go from there.
So he always starts with "fellas." Nice. So to keep us moving here, I was.
How did I do on my time for my intro? I was way under
good.
Adam
You're
North.
perfect.
Dude, that's great.
You're perfect.
Nailed it.
Nice.
You're natural.
So
Okay.
I feel like the natural question here is, I had no idea that you played quads for 3 years. How did you end up, because obviously your whole drum corps career was snare drum, as far as I know at least.
Right.
If you played quads for
right.
3 years, then how did you end up on playing snare drum? Did you always prefer snare drum and just played quads out of a necessity, or did you just randomly change one day? How did that happen?
I think I've always been a snare drummer. I mean, as I said, in my freshman year, I auditioned for snare. Like, I definitely didn't try out for anything else. And I enjoyed snare. And then I think, I'm not sure I remember exactly. I think it might have been more necessity for me to move over to quads my sophomore year, and then kind of stayed that way. And then there was, I think it was more a necessity, if I'm just kind of remembering the best I can back to those times.
So were you still playing a lot of snare drum, just like on your own outside of marching band?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I eventually got my own snare drum, because I knew that, the equipment that we used at my high school, it was nothing like it was 80s series marching percussion. So the drums that had since been developed were completely different. And I knew that if I wanted to march drum corps, I was going to need to play on an instrument that was, comparable to those instruments. So I finally got a drum in high school, and I would practice that, all the time. I think my whole town was like, is there somebody like rapid fire out here? Like, what's going on? Does somebody have like an automatic weapon? Because I used to just play it out in my yard, and marching snare drum is loud, so.
Very loud. That's
no,
awesome.
really, it's not. But no, I enjoyed playing quads. I think, like my drum set background allowed me to kind of have a little bit of an easier transition into playing quads, with navigating around the drums and, kind of that whole aspect of quad drumming. But, I was never a quad aficionado. Like, I would not be able to kind of hang with guys like Tim Jackson or like Nick RC or my boy Danny G from Boston, but and Paulie Winterhalter too. But I could hang to a certain extent. And of course, in high school, I'm like, I told you guys I was like making up my own parts. So.
So then you going through high school, you were actually close to the Allentown. I saw in an interview you said you went to DCI Allentown as like a sophomore, which I'm pretty envious of, because if that was still in the same schedule, like towards the end of the season, and that's such a like fun lot experience as a member in the outside J. Bernie Crum and like the park and stuff. Mm-hmm. Was it still at the end of the year back then too?
Oh yeah. The DCI East is, as far as I know, it's always been kind of in that early August, just a week or, depending on the calendar, like a week before finals or 2 weeks before finals. But yeah, kind of that end of the year. But yeah, 1998 Allentown was my first live drum corps show that I went to.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I just remember like showing up to the stadium and experiencing exactly what you just kind of said, that the park and, all the trucks and the just people everywhere, and you can hear drum lines and horn lines and there's color guards, and like the whole thing is just like everybody's cranking, and then you go and find your seat, and that stadium is super iconic to the drum corps world, as it kind of sits in the side of a hill. And actually, back then, that was a grass field, and it was like not good. I remember marching on it actually before they changed it to turf. That thing was rough. It was like the surface of the moon. It was bad.
Oh gosh, I can imagine, because the parks and everything nearby it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Man.
But yeah, just getting into the stadium and kind of like, seeing those first drum corps kind of roll on. I remember Les Etoiles, they don't even exist anymore, but I remember them playing. They were small, like Division 3 corps at the time, when we had Division 1, 2, and 3 before they changed to World and Open. And, in retrospect, they were okay, obviously. But like, I remember being like, oh my gosh, they're so good. Like, oh wow, like they're so good. Little did I know, like later in the evening, the drum corps were going to drastically change in terms of their size and also excellence. But I just enjoyed it all the way, like from the beginning to the end. I thought it was just the coolest thing. So
that is funny to me, like the perspective of it when you're that young and inexperienced. Like even the lowest level drum corps are just the coolest thing ever, and they sound perfect because your ears aren't trained like they are now. It's still infinitely better than any high school group you've seen at a high school competition. Like it's just crazy how like, I don't want to use the word naive, but it's like ignorance is bliss a little bit.
I was just going to say that. I was going to be like, it's like Cypher from The Matrix, ignorance is bliss. It's like, it's almost like the training now that we have with our, having done this for so many years with multiple groups. It's like, now I sit there and I'm like, none of this is any good. You know what I mean? Like it's like a blessing and a burden at the same time. Of course I wouldn't trade and go back, but yeah, when you don't really realize the nuances, even though some things are blatant, they're not a nuance. But, if you're not really trained to that level, it's like we said, ignorance is bliss. You just love it, So
you don't know what you don't know. But that's a good year, too. Cadets had the Stonehenge show, and BD did that West Side Story that year or something.
Yeah, it was like West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet kind of smashed together. It was really, really good.
Yeah, dude, late 90s drum corps was just...
Loved it.
It's good. It's a good era in the activity.
So then you went to college before your first official year of drum corps, correct?
No, I actually...
Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, I guess I ended my introduction at high school, the end of high school, right? So I marched in high school, and then I think it was my junior year. Going into my junior year, I kind of decided, like, okay, I think I want to try out for drum corps, and this was as a 15-year-old. I would have turned, is that right? 15, 16, 16, 17. No, I guess I would have been 16. Anyway. 16 years old, trying, and the cadets were at that point still out of Bergen County, New Jersey, which is up by New York City, which is, for me to get there, I have cousins that live up there, but it's like an hour and change. It's not that
Nice.
far. So, to have a drum corps like that, virtually, local, I mean, that's, not everybody has that, in their backyard like that, not that it's in my backyard, but it was close enough. I didn't have to get on a plane to go to audition. I didn't have to go on a plane, if I earned a spot to go be at the camps and stuff like that. So that was, a nice advantage to the location. But yeah, I decided to go try out, and kind of like, I was really nervous, obviously. And that was in November of 1999. So this would have been for the 2000 season.
Nice.
Yeah, so I made it through to January camp, and it was 13 snares at the January camp, and we were like playing the opener, which was from the We Are the Future show, right? The 2000.
Yep.
The Future Now or something.
Chaos.
Yeah,
the Chaos opener was awesome. The Disney fireworks show. But anyway, I remember kind of finishing that camp, and they pulled me into the room at the end of the weekend, and they said, hey, at this point we're gonna let you go. We think you need a little bit more experience. You're a little young at 16. And in that year they had 8 vets in the snare line, and they took 2 rookies to make a 10-man snare line.
Man.
And the 2 rookies were like vets of other drum corps. So like, here's little old 16-year-old me who's never marched a drum corps ever. And I'm like, all right, well, okay, cool. I guess I got kind of far. And they were like, we think you should go march somewhere else. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to practice. So, that was my junior year. So I did the rest of my junior year, and I just practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I went back the next fall, for auditions for 2001. This is my senior year in high school at this point. And I got a spot. And so I graduated high school. I actually graduated, I did all my work early. Like I had the core kind of like right away, because when you're in high school, and I know different high schools there's academic years kind of end at different times. Like here in Indy, it's like crazy. Like school starts in like July or something, like not where I'm from. Like school would be ending sometime in June, like late in June forever, because we'd have a million snow days, and then you start after Labor Day kind of thing. So, drum corps starts in mid-May, so yeah. I'm still going to be in school for like a month, so I had to kind of take all my finals and finish everything early, which I did, and the school signed off on it. And, I was able to kind of move in on time, which was super cool to leave high school early, because I just wanted to get out of there. Like,
yeah,
how
sure,
you are
done at that point.
Senior, you're like, I gotta get out of here,
Yeah.
So I moved in on time, and then I did have to go back. I had to like go back and march in the Memorial Day parade, and I went back to graduate and walk and everything, and do a spring concert or something like that. But that was about it, and spring training was at that time up near Allentown, so that. We were talking about that earlier. I lived about an hour and a half south of Allentown. So again, not a bad drive, to pop in and out of spring training to go like do a high school thing. So
got to go graduate, guys. See you in 2 days.
Yeah. So I graduated, and then that was my first summer of drum corps, which was 2001 with the cadets. And actually, you guys were talking about this earlier about your first show, and I remember my first show, I thought I was going to throw up. Like I was so nervous. And like, Mike, I think you said you were like blacked out. And then Evan, you were like, I don't even remember.
I'll look it up here in a second though.
I was right there with you guys, man. Like I was super nervous. And I just remember like feeling I was going to throw up. before we took the field. And then you know, the adrenaline's going and you take the field, and then you're just kind of in go mode. You know, the muscle memory kind of kicks in, and of course, there's, like you said, a million mistakes. Like it was on a baseball field. We were in Buffalo, so we had to I remember marching the last drill set of the show, which was course at like 208 beats a minute at like a 6-5 on the diagonal or something crazy.
Sounds about right.
The drum
for
line
the
had to
cadets.
go. Yeah, the drum line had to go over the pitcher's mound. So I remember crabbing to my right and going up over the pitcher's mound and coming down. I was like, "What is going on?"
That's funny.
But
yeah. My first show, like I said, I blacked out, and I vividly remember standing. I have the images imprinted in my brain of the gate, standing at the gate. I remember what the crowd, the wall of people. It was a Michigan show. I don't remember exactly what it was or where it was, but somewhere in Michigan that year in 2010. And I remember the crowd. I remember the stadium, but absolutely nothing about the show. Or anything after it. Nothing.
I just looked it up. 2009, the first show was Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. I don't remember that show from 2009, but I remember it from 2010 because we tore so bad. So I remember that stadium.
I remember that too.
And then our second show of 2009 was the Annapolis show at the Naval Academy, and I do remember that one. So
that's a good show. I like that stadium. That's a fun one.
It was really fun. Annapolis is probably really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So first year, so not to gloss over this, but your first year marching with the cadets, you guys go on to eventually win the high percussion Fred Sanford Award for one of 3 consecutive years. That was the first one. Do you remember that summer being super challenging, or thinking this is what I thought this would be? This is way harder than I thought this would be. Because the cadets are pretty notorious for just we're going to put our nose to the grindstone and we're going to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously as a first year member, your mind is, I mean, I can speak from my own experience, but I think you guys would agree with this. As a first year member, your mind is in so many different places. And honestly, there's just the level of survival in there. So that being said, it's my second and third and fourth, and then, going on to be, an instructor and so on, my mind has drastically changed how I handle it. But in 2001, I remember obviously survival mode. Don't tick. You know what I mean? Don't take a wrong step. Just all the details. Which those details didn't go away, but how you think about them, I guess, kind of your mind goes to a little bit more at ease over the years of experience of doing it. But yeah, I remember in 01, it was extremely challenging. I mean, this is my first year marching drum corps. It's also at the cadets, which is, the cadets are a top level drum corps. It's that's challenging in itself, right?
Yeah, the standard.
Yeah, and obviously the standard that's there with that kind of a group, not only as a drum corps, but especially, with that percussion section, just super tough. I mean, fast, big drill moves, a lot of notes, and I just always kind of associated this kind of pristine clarity, even if it wasn't, with the cadets, so just trying to live up to that standard. And then being surrounded with people that I looked up to, from 2000 and 99 and 98 and 97, I marched with people that were in those drum corps. So I'm trying to, be them and not disappoint, so it was definitely very challenging. And, in particular for that percussion section, coming off of 2000, there were several age outs. So it was, every group every year is a new makeup, right? Your membership is not the same identically every year, right? So some years you retain more, some years you don't, whether it's age outs or people, not marching or going on to march somewhere else or whatever. So with a slightly relatively newer group, it took a little bit longer to get to that level of clarity and quality that we were going for. Of course, I have no basis for anything really, because this is my first time doing it. So, but yeah, I just remember it being an extreme challenge. I remember being at April camp actually, and that was the first time we put the drums on. And I remember like doing a little tracking block, marching and playing. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh, this is so hard." And we were just tracking, like we were literally doing like a figure 8 block. And I remember thinking to myself, like, "Am I going to be able to do this?" So, you know, obviously the rest is history. But yeah, that year was tough. But you know, we had great instructors and great leadership inside the line. You know, and obviously the work ethic of the Corps and the mentality there, you know, all those things together, whether you win or lose at the end of the day. I mean, we were pretty successful even without the title, but I mean, obviously the title's a nice little award at the end.
Oh yeah,
Nice cherry.
It's like a little feather in your cap.
Yeah.
To kind of.
Yeah.
You're speaking to instruction there. Obviously Tom was there. Eric was there for all of your years,
Eric
right?
Ward.
Eric Ward.
Yeah, Eric Ward was my snare tech all 4 years. Yeah, and it was cool to kind of have him, you know, which was again somebody that I looked up to. You know, he marched in the early mid '90s. I think '93, 4, 5. Eric marched in the snare line at Cadets.
Something like that. Yeah.
You know that '95 drum line, like I said, back into my freshman band camp. You know, and when we popped that VHS in, it was like I'm looking at my future snare tech. I didn't realize at the time, but yeah, he was great, man. Like super tough guy. And you know, I remember over the years he and I got into it, but it was always, you know, "Hey man, it's cool. Don't worry. I'm sorry I said that." Or, you know, like, "I know what you were talking about. I got frustrated." You know, like, well, he was great, man.
Would you say
awesome.
the title of Drum Yoda is appropriate for him?
Drum Yoda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the things that he would do, you know, you walk up, I'll always remember this, like, and you may have experiences like this now as teachers, like I know I do. When I walk up to one of my students' drums and I play on their drum, and I'm not watching myself drum, I'm watching their face. You know what I'm saying? Like to see the reaction out of them, whether it's like the feeling that they get when I drum on their drum or how it sounds to them. Like I remember having that kind of a reaction when Eric would come up and drum on our drums. It was like he would play with such intensity through the surface that like you'd actually, somebody walked up to your drum and like put their hand down on your drum and you like bent forward a little bit. Like I remember like my body like vibrating with whenever he would play, and we'd just be like, "Oh my gosh," you know what I mean? Like
I actually have one of those,
like through the roof.
I have one of those stories with you too. I remember in 2009, specifically, you were drumming on someone's drum, like a part, but you had a gok block and a Gatorade bottle, like a gok block in one hand and a Gatorade bottle in the other hand, and you were like stroking out playing the parts, and I'm sitting there thinking, how the hell is he playing this part? And I'm like over here trying to play with sticks. Like he's got a gok block and a Gatorade bottle. I'm just like, what is going on?
That's funny. That actually, I think that was probably an impression of Colin McNutt. He used to come up to our drums at UMass, which I guess we can talk about later. But he'd be like, he'd come up with like some like a cowbell in one hand and then like, I don't know, a coffee cup or like a broken drumstick in his other hand, and he'd say, "Match my sound," and he'd play something on the drum, "Match my sound." And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're playing with a cowbell, you know? But,
so we're talking about the intensity. We're talking about the intensity of obviously your first summer, and you go on to do 3 more. 2002, 2003, 2004, obviously 02 and 03, you guys take home 2 more titles at the end of the summer. I know Tom had talked too when we had him on about the 03 summer specifically, saying like you guys never really, at least scores wise, ended up on the top till like much later in the summer.
The end, yeah, actually. And I remember like both of those years, you know, 02 and 03 being drastically different from one another. But the thing that was similar about both of them is both of those drum lines, well, and 01 too, but I guess I didn't realize as much. But 02 and 03, like it took us a long time to get to that zone where, you know, we were rewarded competitively, especially 03, which I can, you know, agree with Tom on that one. 03, I remember it was, let's see, who was Santa Clara Vanguard was also really, really strong that year in percussion. And, towards the end of the season, it was kind of them and a little bit of us, but it would be them. And then I'm sure Blue Devils were in the mix somewhere. So I remember we were actually at the Westchester show, which was at the time right before Allentown. So this was like maybe the Thursday night before Allentown, DCI East. And actually Mark Thurston is drudging drums, which was rare, but kind of cool at the same time, Mark Thurston. But I remember he had Vanguard up that night. And I don't remember how much by. I'm sure, Evan, you could probably pull up a recap from somewhere. Find it. So this would be Westchester 2003. I'm pretty sure he had Vanguard up. And then the next night we were at Allentown, or maybe it was Saturday night, a couple days later. And Vanguard was also there with us on that night. And Prosperity was judging. And I believe we came out on top in percussion at Allentown, and then I don't think we lost after that, if I remember correctly. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we didn't lose quarters, semis, or finals. But yeah, I mean, okay, last week of the season,
good time to peak.
Kind of there, yeah. I mean, and obviously, you want to make sure you're playing great. But the panel, having the right panel, obviously, that's a conversation maybe for later, but, having a panel that is favorable for you always helps.
Having somebody that's on the field that's willing to judge on the show of the night always helps.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Not to get political, but I think in the current state of DCI, there's a little bit of a little slotting that goes on every now and then.
I mean, I'll come out and say it. I mean, that 100% happens.
Hang on, I gotta check with my lawyer. Can I talk about slotting? I will not comment on.
I plead the fifth.
Aforementioned slotting.
No, we've talked about that on here ad nauseum over the past couple years of doing this. Sometimes it's kind of not obvious, and sometimes it's really obvious, and that's as detailed as I'll get on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Moving on. So what was so you marched 01, 02, 03, and 04 all at the Cadets. You were only the center in were you the center in 04?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys were, from my understanding, that was like you had a lot of age outs in 03, and then it was a little more green rookie oriented the next summer.
Yeah, especially in the snare line. So in 03, we aged out. We actually, every year I marched, we always started with 10 snares. 01, 2, 3, 4. We always started with 10 snares, and we never ended with 10 snares. In
was
01,
that due to injury?
In 01, one guy just didn't show up to spring training. So that's an easy way to get cut. He just cut himself. I mean, he was a great player. But he just didn't show up. And then the other guy got injured, and then he went into the pit. So, yeah, it was an injury. 2002 was an injury, and there was actually 2 girls in the snare line that year, one of which was injured, and she ended up doing the rest of the season in the pit. And then in 03, another injury, ended with 9. And then in 04... Heidi, actually, Heidi and I split center in 04 with 10, and then she got hurt, and then I ended up being the actual center of the snare line with 9 snares.
So what I'm hearing,
you were the only vet in that, right? Weren't you the only vet in 04?
Yeah, in 04. Sorry, I tangented there. Tangented. Is that a word? But yeah, in 04. We had Heidi and I were the only vets, and then she got hurt, and so that left me with 4 rookies on each side. Brand new.
So what I'm hearing is Cadets drill is hard.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely tough, but at the same time, I don't want to just say that doing hard drill is like the basis for being injured. I mean, I never I never was injured. Obviously you have aches and pains and soreness and from overuse. Like I got shin splints. I remember my lower outside of my shins, like above my ankles, getting really swollen, especially like the older I got and the later in the season it got. Like I remember in 03 and 04 in particular, my last couple of years, like my legs just got really like it was not great. I mean, I wasn't like injured, you know what I mean? I was just like, my legs are hurting, you know what I mean? But everybody's bodies are different. The level of training that you do before you come into an activity like drum corps, it's certainly not an activity that doesn't have stress. Like the physical stress, the emotional stress, the mental stress. I mean, it's as much as we love it all, it's definitely a difficult thing, like in all ways. Sure. So, but I guess point being is I was never injured. So, but yeah, the cadets drill is hard, but like that's
it's exciting though.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, like I wouldn't want to have marched if the drill wasn't the way it was, that was part of what made it attractive for me to want to go there, among other things. But like, yeah, the drill being super crazy and awesome. That's part of it, So and when you're out there doing it, it's like, this is it. This is what I thought. This is hard, but
So we said the 04 line the 04 snare line specifically had a lot of rookies. I think a guy that I've taught with from Louisville here locally was in that 04 snare line, Seth Whitaker.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I remember Seth.
Yep.
And then he actually went on, I think he was the section leader maybe in 06.
Yeah. 06, yeah. He was the center in 06 and then he marched as well in 05.
In 05. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Small world.
I actually saved him from getting cut in 04.
Do tell.
Well, he had come in and and I know you guys know Jared Andrews. He and I were seat partners actually for 3 years because we marched together 02, 03, 04, and then he went to Devs in 05. But we were seat partners, and Jared and Seth were friends. I think they went to Moorhead maybe together.
Yep.
Anyway, so Jared, I think, brought his buddy Seth up to camp, and here I am kind of meeting, hey, Jared, what's up? Like, good to see you again. And this is Seth. Hey, Seth, nice to meet you. And, you're just, drumming together and checking the hands out and this and that. And, I could tell, like, all right, this guy's got it. Like he has what it takes. His hands look good. He, kind of comes from a zone that, like, I think, didn't Eric Ward go to Moorhead at some point? There's a lineage.
That's like mine and Mike's lineage. Like, Eric was at Moorhead the same time my high school instructor and Mike's high school instructor were all at Moorhead. And so, like, that whole kind of thing just stayed, that culture from the mid-90s really on.
So Seth came along and I could tell, like, okay, cool. Like, he could definitely do this. But anyway, he came to camp and, like, he wasn't very prepared. So, Tom was gonna cut him. And
Tom's big on preparedness.
Well, and, rightly so. I mean, certainly if you want to get a spot anywhere or get the job, like, you don't want to go in and not be prepared, right? But anyway, he came in and he wasn't as prepared as he should have been, and Tom was, going to cut him. And I think the cool thing about, kind of creating a membership, at any place, it's like, I really think that it's cool, like, with a guy like Tom, and I know Colin does this too. Like, when they talk to the vets, like, hey, what's your vibe? Like, we're thinking about, these are who we're looking at, and how is it gelling? When the staff isn't there, how is it when you guys hang out, at the end of the rehearsal, and when you're having food, and when you're on a pad, like, what's the vibe? So, I remember Tom kind of talking about that, and I was like, listen, I know Seth didn't prepare, but, like, he's a cool dude. He's got what it takes. He's gonna be fine. Like, I think you should not cut him. Anyway, that's what happened. But
what's up for him? I need to be able to make fun of him next time I see him. Was he more prepared the next camp?
Oh, I would. Yes, I think he was. like, dude,
So
if you come to next camp and you're not prepared, like, come on, man.
I
Like,
can't
stuck my
save
neck
you
out
again.
for you.
I can't
you're
do it
toast.
again.
Yeah.
I used my one pass.
One get out of jail free card.
Right.
So that '04 summer was unique. You guys did the Tour of Champions that year. I, in my head, just imagine that, like, getting done with finals and having to think about, like, all right, the competitive season is pretty much over.
Yep.
That I would just, like, check out and be like, we really got to go out to California and do this. Like, what's this?
Yeah.
Like, can we just, like, go to California and not play?
Wait, what happened in 04?
So after DCI finals, they did what they called the Tour of Champions, which they have something now, but it's a little bit different, where there was like
It's
5 or 6 cores. It's like 5 or 6 cores, like it was like the Cadets, Cavaliers, Blue Devils, Vanguard, Phantom Regiment, and I feel like Scouts maybe.
And Madison, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was,
and they did like an extended
it was the
tour
champion
after.
course. Yeah.
And so you guys went from Denver, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Denver, and we traveled out to California. We actually stopped in Utah, I think it was, at like some university. I don't remember which one it was, but all 6 corps stopped at this university, and it was really cool. Actually, all 6 of the food trucks were kind of parked in a parking lot in a circle. So it was like you could go around to anybody's food truck. Like, they just served food all at the same time. And this was only for like a day, like 2 days, maybe a day, 2 days, something like that. But yeah, all the food trucks were in a circle. Everybody was mingling and, eating off each other's food trucks. And then each corps had like an allotted rehearsal time in the stadium at this university. So yeah, that was that. And then we kind of proceeded on to California, which I think we started, I actually can't remember if we started in NorCal or SoCal. I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, we kind of did a little California tour. We played at Qualcomm Stadium, which is where the Chargers played. I don't know if they still play there. I don't think they play there anymore, but we played at Qualcomm. We played at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. I believe we played at Stanford. And then we also did some cool kind of like theater indoor, not really like blast, but like, in a theater setting. So, it's got that kind of indoor sound, which I thought was always cool. Like the drum corps playing inside a theater like that was
crazy
just
loud.
different. Yeah, it was awesome.
The volume levels would be nuts.
Yeah. Some of those experiences were pretty cool, but like you were saying, like, yeah, you just spent a whole tour, invested in all ways, grinding it out, doing your very best. And then, finals comes and you're done. And then, everybody is ready to, go, I guess, and here we have another week of this stuff. So they actually had us paired up, the drum corps. So Cadets and Blue Devils stayed at a housing site together. Cavaliers and Scouts stayed at a housing site together, and Phantom and Vanguard stayed together. But I remember very distinctly the Cadets, like, we get to California and we wake up like maybe a half hour later than we would have woken up on tour, like actual tour. It's like, oh, cool. Thanks for that 30 minutes. And we're out there rehearsing. Like, we're out there, like, we painted a field and set up page 1 and like reset. And like, we're looking, all the Blue Devils, like their whole caravan is there, but there's no one to be seen. Like, there's not a soul in sight. And after like maybe 2 hours of rehearsal, like I look to my left across the field and I see like one kid like pushing a marimba, like, and slowly the whole drum corps, all of the Blue Devils like trickled out to the field. They set up, did a run through, and then tore down. That's what it was. And we're out there like rehearsing the closer, with the metronome, like, oh my God. Anyway, the whole rehearsal thing kind of eased over time. Like, we virtually kind of ended up not rehearsing as it went on, but yeah, it was definitely an experience, after drum corps tour, going and doing that. Definitely unique. And yeah, the Tour of Champions now, it's virtually not like that at all. It's kind of the TOC shows, if you will, like they're in the middle of the season. It's, it's kind of random shows, but it's kind of like a headliner show, like you'll see like the best cores at those shows.
Like the top 8 or something at that time of the year. So I guess this will be...
It's in the season, so it's not like an extra,
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. It's nice to not have to worry about that afterwards.
For sure. I guess this will be a good segue into like the teaching portion and stuff too. So while you were marching and doing your competitive tour, you were also attending UMass, which is obviously where Tom Hannum, Colin McNutt, Jeff Hope all were, which then I'm sure fed into your connection and networking for teaching. But so obviously you met Colin, met Tom, doing the UMass thing. When did that whole like kind of connection bleed into like, oh, I'm going to end up going to teach scouts now?
So let me think here. At UMass, a lot of the guys that I marched with at Cadets were also students there. One in particular is dude Chris Vale, who was my section leader at Cadets. Every year that I marched, aside from my age out year, he aged out in 03. But I mean, we were like, to this day, best friends. But he aged out in 03, and then Colin was, I guess he had finished at Glassman in 02, and then he was at Magic in 03, and then in 04 he took the percussion gig at the Madison Scouts, and so he actually hired Chris Vale to be the snare tech for the 04 Scout season, which I was still marching at Cadets at the time. But anyway, Chris had marched at Cadets for like 5 years, like 99 through 03. So he was really, a Tom Ungst student as well as a Colin and Tom Hannum student. But anyway, did this season at Scouts in 04. And then Tom Ungst called Chris and hired him to be the snare tech at Cadets, which had, allowed the Scouts snare tech position to kind of vacate. And obviously I aged out in 04. I was a student at UMass. And so Colin, having been a student of Colin's there, he kind of jumped on the opportunity, I guess, to kind of pick me up right out of, my age out year, with Chris going over to Cadets. So I think he called me one day. It was like maybe September, October of 04. And he's like, come on, we're going to go have lunch at the Fresh Side, which is like a little restaurant in Amherst. And, long story short, he asked me if I wanted to, I was interested in being the snare tech for Scouts. And I said, in my mind, I was like, yes, absolutely, like immediately.
Yeah.
But I think I said out loud, I was like, let me think about it for 24 hours or something like that. You know what I mean? But I had kind of already made up my mind. Because, when I was marching in drum corps, I mean, going back to way, kind of the beginning of the conversation, it's like I wanted to be in a band, a drum line, since I was like 4 or 5 years old. So like, this is something that I want to do. And now as an age out, it's like ripped away from you, what do I do? And, we haven't really talked about WGI, but like my high school wasn't in the WGI scene. WGI wasn't as big in the area, at the time when I was kind of coming up. So my exposure to WGI wasn't until almost too late to be a member.
So you really kind of, I guess, just needed like, what's the next step in like filling this lifelong?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, it's like, what am I going to do next after I age out? And of course, you want to like. I knew that I wanted to teach, but like, where am I going to teach? Well, there's no jobs. Oh, yes, there is. And Colin's asking me to do it. So like, that was a really easy yes for me. But yeah, he got me kind of my first official teaching gig in drum corps with the Scouts for 05.
It's a good gig. I love those Scouts drum lines, 05, 06. Didn't use scoops. Had some really tasty cowbell beats. The Nutchida, I think that was my first viewing or hearing of that. And I was like, what are they playing? What's this?
Yeah.
What's the rhythm?
I feel like the Nutchida came about maybe in 04. So,
okay.
But yeah, very, a year earlier than that. But yeah, I do remember kind of hearing some of that stuff in the 04 book. But yeah, we definitely played them in 05. And then, those kind of evolved into sausage linkers, as our buddy James Sparling would probably say that he invented, I'm sure, right?
Oh, does he try to claim that?
I think he does, but I think it's correct. I mean, I think he did make it up.
It was in that Crown cadence. Those were.
Well, yeah, but James taught a Crown.
Yeah, I know. Like, did he? I know in that cadence.
Oh, are you talking?
And I know
about,
he taught
are
there.
You talking about? Are you talking about the 09 cadence with that crazy snare break that I wrote?
Yes. Yeah. That had the sausage linkers in there.
Is this?
Well, yeah, it was probably like an ode to James. I think he made it up. We'll have to get in touch with him and be like, James, did you make up the sausage? And he'd be like, yes. Well, see, I told you.
Are sausage linkers the 5-lit rudiment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
it's like a
nutshada
book
with a
extended
diddle
book report or something.
and then a buzz on the end. It's like
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you do a hybrid video on those? I'm just kidding.
No. I should have though.
So you got 05 and 06. I'm assuming that Colin leaving the Scouts is also why you probably left the Scouts, because then he started to cross over into Cadets, and when him and Unks were doing like the kind of split role, right, in 08? Or was that 07?
It was 07, yeah. So
yeah.
I was at Scouts 05, 06, and then I remember actually near, I want to say like Murfreesboro time, maybe into like Atlanta in 06. I remember like George Hopkins actually coming up to me and he was like looking for Colin.
Of course.
You know, so like retrospect, it's like, oh, he was going to hire him for the next season. So anyway, yeah, Colin, well, Madison 06 complete, like that drum corps, it kind of exploded, you know, on a staff perspective. You know, everybody, I don't think anybody came back, whether it was, you know, the board kind of cleaning house or, you know, people kind of going their own ways, and even the membership too. I remember 06 to 07 was a major change for the Scouts in terms of just everything. But yeah, Colin ended up at Cadets with Ian Moyer, and I guess we haven't talked about Lee Bettis, but Colin brought in Lee to be a consultant and kind of help run the percussion program at Madison those 2 years. And those guys kind of have a history of teaching together in multiple places and kind of tag teaming over the years, whether Lee was in charge or Colin was in charge. I feel like they would kind of, you know, as friends bring one another in. And so I met Lee officially. I'd met him before, but I met him officially at Scouts in 05. And so then we were working together there 05, 06. And then, you know, the Madison thing kind of ended and Colin went to Cadets. And then Lee called me at one point. I think it was like August. I was definitely at band camp in Maine teaching King Philip at the time. And Lee called me and he was like, hey, I'm talking to a couple of different drum corps and I wanted to know, like, no matter what, like, he didn't really give me a name of a corps, but no matter what, I want you to come be my snare tech. And, you know, are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'll come with you, you know, wherever that is. I didn't know at the time. And then it ended up being Carolina Crown. So yeah, in 2007, we transitioned down to Crown, and that kind of got that era going.
Yeah, you guys, that whole staff, I guess, and design team, you guys, did Andrew roll in 07 too, Markworth?
Yep. Andrew was there in 07.
So Andrew, yep. Lee, and you, and did James and Rudy come in 07?
Yep. James,
and then
Sparling and Rudy Garcia, yep.
Of course, on the brass staff, I guess Michael and them had moved in.
Yeah, the brass thing had kind of already been going. I want to say, I mean, Michael had been arranging there for a number of years before that, but also, you know, Matt Harloff and, you know, Ben and, you know, his team of instructors, they had kind of been there for maybe a few years, at least since 05, I want to say, but probably before that, maybe even 03 or 04. But yeah, they had kind of gotten the Crown Brass thing kind of rolling. And I remember hearing Crown Brass really kind of stick out in 05, being like, whoa, that sounds pretty good. You know what I mean? You know, better than I ever had remember hearing Carolina Crown sound. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was cool to kind of be, you know, on that team with Andrew and Lee and James and Rudy and Frank Chappell and Ian Hale and Steve Ballard and all those guys. I'm sure I'm missing a couple guys, but Rob Keaty. But yeah, you know, to be on that team and, you know, with that brass program and on Team Crown. It was great.
That was really
it
the kick.
awesome.
That was the kickstart of the rise of basically, I would say, what Carolina Crown is today.
Yeah, for sure.
'07, the Horse Show, 2008, the Fantini Show, and then obviously '09. It was just like rising in the ranks, and then also the shows were just super fun. The grass is always greener, obviously, which is my first year. And it was funny too. You were talking about your first summer being like survival mode, and I remember people telling me like, man, that show was so hard, and I never knew how hard it was until like later, until like the next summer. And I was like, man, this is way easier. And I could never figure out if it was just the show was easier. It was like my second year. I wasn't a rookie. It was easier. But I was just kind of naive. I was like, I guess this is just how hard it is. I don't know.
I had the same experience at Blue Stars. I remember getting to the Rhythm X camps in 2011, and there were guys like Dan Shack was from Marsh Cavaliers in 10. Evan came from Crown in the summer of 10 and all that stuff, and a couple other guys from their various corps. And me and Travis Peterman had marched Blue Stars that summer, and my first summer, just like Evan said, and like I had no clue how hard our drill was. And all of those guys were like, man, you guys were running like crazy the whole show. And to me, it was just drum corps. I had nothing to compare it to, and it was hard. It was hard, but I just figured that's what everyone was doing. And then when I watched the finals DVD, I'm like, man, they're like, have they left the same 15-yard range in the past 60 seconds? Like, what is going on?
If they're wearing blue, probably not. But then, so you guys kind of created the rise of Crown, and like there were so many milestones during your tenure there. Obviously, I remember in '09, kind of halfway through the summer, we had beaten Cadets, and I think that was the first time Crown had ever beaten them ever in overall scoring.
I think '08 actually.
'08
Orlando, yeah, because I remember we were like excited, and we were like rocking the bus, and Kevin Smith got mad, which Kevin Smith doesn't get mad. So, and I don't know that he was actually mad. I'm sure he was really happy actually, but don't rock the bus.
Yeah,
the end of that. But yeah, no, definitely '09. We kept going, and I think '09 definitely as a percussion section. I don't know that we had beaten Cadets in '08 as a percussion section. I don't remember, but definitely in '09, and they were great in '09. I mean, we were rocking with them all the way to the end as well.
Yep. And then obviously there through the first championship and all that. And then there was kind of, I guess, like changing of just like things here and there, and then you decided to go and join back up with Colin in 16, right?
17. So I actually did
17.
10 years at Crown, 07 through 16. But yeah, in that time there, I mean, Bettis was there from 07 through 11, so 5 years with Bettis, and then Tom Hannum came in 12, and obviously he's still there. But that was my second 5 years to make the 10 with Hannum. So yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing for me is obviously having experience with Tom as a student, and then kind of, being a colleague and just, learning from him on so many different levels. Just kind of neat just to be around that level of excellence. And like we were talking about lineages before, with Moorhead and the guys that you guys know, but like, I mean, Bettis was a Hannum student at Garfield, and Ungst was a Hannum student at Garfield, and then Ungst taught Bettis, and, Colin is in there, so it's kind of a neat little quote unquote little drumming family tree here.
Yeah.
Where and when did Colin march? I just realized I have no clue.
Colin
Cadets,
marched
1991.
No. Colin never marched Cadets. Colin marched Boston actually.
Vanguard.
And then he went to Vanguard. Yeah.
The legendary 92 Vanguard.
Yeah, 92. And then Colin I don't know if he aged out or just didn't go back. I think he aged out at Vanguard, but he taught at Star in 1993 with Bettis, with Hannum, right? Okay. So, you can see how that kind of, that's exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
And then, Bettis went on to Phantom, and Star left and did Brass Theater, and then they turned into Blast, and then, Tom Hannum and Colin kind of reemerged from doing that and took over the Crossmen, and then Hannum kind of got out of it and focused on Blast and UMass. And Colin then went to Glassman, and Lee was, you know what I mean? It's just like there's all kinds of like intertwining little
network and stuff.
Networks, yeah, exactly. But it's really neat to kind of know where it all came from. But yeah, after Crown, I moved on to Boston, or but like you said, back with Colin. Yeah, I think it was after 10 years at Crown. And going through a lot, certainly in 10 years, there's a lot to experience, ups and downs, positives, negatives, successes, failures, all those things. I certainly love my time there. And, a lot of the people that I worked with, and obviously the students, guys like you, obviously here we are. But yeah, it was just, I think time for a change, and, the Boston thing was kind of a rebrand, if you will. And, a lot of the team at Boston are people that I've worked with, for a lot of years, not only in drum corps, but also in marching bands and WGI and that kind of thing. So it felt like a good fit. And, they took me right into their family and took care of me. And, it's been a great, obviously this would have been the fourth year, 2020, but, those first 3 years, 17, 18, 19 at Boston have been, a ton of fun, and the Corps has grown exponentially. And
oh yeah,
it's just been really fun to kind of, and I think we, like you said, kind of at Crown, building it into what it is now. Like Boston obviously has been around for a long time. It might be like the third oldest drum corps that exists, but corps, it's tough. Like corps, everybody wants to win, right? Mm-hmm. There can only be one winner, but okay, how do you get to be that good? Well, you need a lot of strong things. You need a strong backing. You need a strong board of directors. You need strong design. You need strong teaching. You need strong talent, but, obviously you need strong leadership. So all those things kind of coming together, and, as a big plan for Boston, it just kind of, a lot of things fell into place all at once. And I was fortunate to kind of be a part of that, initial team there in 17, and, kind of create a new culture and create a new powerhouse of a drum corps. I think Boston is, definitely seen differently these days than it was maybe 10 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. So
I would say even more differently than 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I think that was what they needed, like a fresh interjection. I mean, obviously there was a lot of different pieces that came together. Some people from Crown Percussion, Cadets Percussion, some people from Cadets Brass, some people from Crown Guard. Like, it was just like this mesh of like, all right, we're just going to put these pieces together and go.
And I think the cool thing about
swinging.
Like those people in particular is that they have those prior relationships. You know what I mean? Like it's essentially kind of the music team from Cadets, minus Jay Bocook, the horn arranger, but with Ryan George, who's extremely talented and creative. The music guys at Cadets with Colin and Ian, and a lot of the teaching staff, and Mike Zellers, and then the visual team kind of from Crown, Leon and Michael Townsend and Keith Potter, and, all of the incredible guard team, and Aaron Bailey, visual caption head. It's just been really cool to like have some familiarity in a completely brand new organization. You know what I mean? It felt like, okay, that we're in a new house, but like it's all the same friends. You know what I mean? Like it's all the same people, which is kind of neat. So it felt really comfortable kind of right away, and it was just a lot of fun, and it continues to be. So.
And from the outside looking into it, really seemed like a lot of people too had the opportunity with kind of just starting off on a fresh foot to jump into new roles and new, like, I guess, parts of the ensemble as far as like what they're doing. People who have, like you were talking about, just like picking up things from people you've learned with over the years. This just allows you to like almost like create and adapt like what you're able to provide for the corps and the students, and not just do like this one certain thing, but like I'm gonna do this now, and this is gonna be my title, which is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely, have had an evolution, I guess, if you will, in terms of like roles that I've filled. And I kind of started as a snare tech. I can certainly still be a snare tech. It's not like, as things have evolved, I've
forgotten how to do.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten how to do what I used to do. It's just I do this now. So, but yeah, as a snare tech, and then kind of going into more of a coordinator role, a battery coordinator role, and then kind of taking on an assistant caption supervisor role, and then becoming caption head, as well as being a co-arranger, or the music, and then the arranger for the music. And then along with that, as our activities evolved, visually, kind of digging into the visual side of it, the movement, the choreography, the marching stuff, just kind of trying to learn as much as possible and evolve with the activity. So, stay relevant, and you stay, hireable, and, people want to have you come in and work with their program. But yeah, definitely kind of an evolution going from the field into, as a teacher, into more of a design role in a lot of places. And then also as, an upstairs, in the box, kind of managing rehearsals, managing ensemble, music related things, visual related things. But yeah, it's definitely been kind of a neat progression through the years. And, again, just having the ability to kind of learn from some of the best people doing this. I certainly owe, all those people, a ton, just for having the knowledge, openly shared, and, having them coach me as I do what I do, and so on. But it's definitely been fun.
I'm sure that too, evolution has just, and this, I guess we'll go to like a PSA for anybody maybe looking to get into something like what you do in the future as far as like a gig, but that evolution of just like cherry picking knowledge and being willing to branch out and not just pigeonhole you like snare tech, just enhances your marketability for like what you do now, for the plethora of programs that you work with. It's like, well, this is like a list of what I can bring and help your ensemble with, not just this one thing, but like visual design, ensemble design, music coordination, like score editing, like just being able to branch out and do all those things. Because I mean, you work with tons of high schools, some really, really well-known high schools. Are you still with Broken Arrow too?
Yeah, actually, my last flight of 2020, before we all got shut down, was coming back from Broken Arrow. It was like early March. I think it was like March 4th or something like that. That's a funny date. But yeah, I was in town with Jim Wunderlich. He writes the front ensemble and the soundscape. And then Noah Bellamy was in. He does all the staging. So the three of us were in town, kind of doing our last trip. We were in there for like 2 or 3 days with them, kind of continuing to stage and produce and balance and this and that. But I've been with Broken Arrow since 2011. And again, like my connection with that program is, a guy like you, Adam Winkin, was a student that I had at Scouts. He marched Scouts 03, 4, 5, 6. Went on to Cavaliers for a couple of years, but if I don't teach Scouts in 05 and 06, I probably don't meet Adam, and then the rest kind of
the rabbit hole
down. Yeah, so I remember him calling me, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm interviewing for Broken Arrow," and I was like, it was like pull off the highway. I was like, "Dude, make sure you get that job. Like that's a great program,
Yeah.
And then he got the job, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, you want to come in?" And every year that I kind of started going down there, it just progressively got to be more time spent with them. And then I ended up moving down there for a couple of years before I lived in Indy. But yeah, Broken Arrow, I love that program. Some great people, obviously, killer programs, and productions come from those guys.
So you had Broken Arrow,
I was going to
Carmel,
say,
Brownsburg, Center Grove, Walled Lake, or something. I don't know. There's like a laundry list of well-known national groups there, but
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
I mean it's a little different from year to year, but go ahead, Mike.
no, yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm curious, how many programs do you have your fingerprints on? Like currently, how many programs do you work with?
Current
Just high school. Don't
currently,
count Boston. 'Cause Boston's the only drum corps, right?
yeah, Boston's the only drum corps. But high schools, I guess, like if I just use the 2019 fall, right, this past fall, and then what was 2020 winter for Scholastic, it would have been, let's see, Brownsburg that's where I spend actually my most time. Brownsburg, Indiana. That's just north of Avon. It's on the west side of Indy. Carmel High School on the north side. I've been with them since 2016. And then Center Grove on the south side. I spent a little bit more time with their indoor percussion, kind of in a choreographic role or a visual role. But I have done a little bit with their marching band over the years since I've lived in Indy. So those three are my kind of Indianapolis schools, then Broken Arrow and Coweta High School. Coweta is another town that's maybe 15 or 20 minutes near just outside of Broken Arrow. I actually write their music, and I spent some time with their ensemble in the fall. So I think that's it this year. Coweta, Broken Arrow, Carmel, Center Grove, Brownsburg.
It's quite a
I think
list.
that's it.
That's a lot. I was
Then
I'm
you do
listening-
some stuff.
I wrote for a Florida school too called Nice this past fall and last winter, but this fall. They're like a Jacksonville area school.
So
Nice.
you have
Need-
to live, breathe, and eat band. That's a lot. I was like, how do you have the time for that many schools? That's wild.
Yeah.
How many
well, I
miles
mean,
did you
it's-
fly last year?
oh my
That's the real
gosh.
question.
In 2019, I honestly don't know. Actually, it's funny. Like I fly a lot, but the mileage isn't crazy because I live in Indy, which is it's not the center of the country, but it's a little more central, right?
Yeah.
And kind of being a loyalist to United Airlines, I fly through their hubs a lot, right? So Indy to Chicago is a frequent flight, but that's like a half hour. It's literally like, I welcome to 20,000 word now in our descent. You know what I mean? They can't even finish like
Like a
welcome
rainbow,
to the friendly
yeah.
skies. Yeah. So, while there's a lot of flying, the mileage isn't too crazy. I mean, it does rack up, but
Watching your
honestly,
Snapchat stories,
don't know.
like, check out these fresh kicks while I'm sitting on the plane. He's got he's rocking his Adidas shoes, which I'm a fan of Adidas too. Don't get me wrong.
Hey, it's
But
good
you're
stuff.
definitely Adidas loyalist. They make good stuff.
I actually am a huge Adidas fan. Actually, out of the Nike Adidas debate, definitely on the
There's some
Adidas team.
Adidas shorts on right now.
Yeah, but did you always want to do this as your career, or was there a point where you were like, yes, I'm all in. This is what I'm doing.
I mean, I don't know if I like made up my mind, like, like 15-year-old Zach is like, I want to be a drumline guy. You know what I mean? Or like a marching band person. Like, I don't know that it was really that. I definitely know that I as soon as I kind of got into drum corps and, started meeting people, I was meeting people from all over the world. You know what I mean? Like I marched with people from Europe and Canada and Japan and, obviously all over the United States. And like, that was just so cool, just meeting so many different people and networking with people that have the same interests. And, just all these different backgrounds. I just thought that was really awesome. And like, I want to keep this going, like I want to keep having these experiences. And, obviously with what our activity is, it's youth based. So, the rules say you get to a certain age and see you later, it's like, I feel like, here we are, we get to our peak or we get to our prime form, like as performers, 20 or 21 years old or something like that. Right. And then it's like, nope, you're done. But I just got to be like where I'm like, consistently doing well. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
Like more of my reps are like, I'm way closer to being accurate all the time than like my first year, and then it's like, you're done, so how do you keep it going after they say you can't perform anymore? Well, you start teaching and designing, and you know, that's kind of the avenue that I took. I think the more I did it, and as opportunities kind of kept presenting themselves, especially with the drum corps thing, it's such a high profile. You know, it's a spotlight. You know, drum corps is known around the world. You know, so as soon as kind of that, somebody like, okay, I like the Blue Devils, or I like the whoever, you know, like, well, who works with the Blue Devils? Well, you're going to look it up and you're going to see, oh, well, it's Scott Johnson and Scott Chandler. And like, you figure out who these people are. Right. And then you're going to get a phone call, you know what I mean? If they like the brand, and then, you know, kind of the rest has kind of gone that way. Whether it's, you know, someone looking you up just via that, or, you know, more times than not, it's the connections, you know what I mean? Here we are having this podcast, and, you know, the only reason we're having it is because, you know, obviously Evan, you were a former student, and Mike, I met you, you know, after doing this. It's such a, you know, it's like a tight knit, as big as it is, and as many people do it. Like, I feel like you kind of, if you don't know everybody, you know who they are via,
yeah.
You know, the degrees of separation are very low.
You know, like, yeah. So, but I just knew that I wanted to have those experiences, you know, continue on, and, you know, I'm glad for it. You know, some of my best friends are from doing band and drum corps and WGI, and, you know, I've been able to travel via, you know, the skills that I've learned, and, you know, to obviously all over the United States, but to Canada and Japan and Europe and Brazil. I went to South America a few years back with the Inhale. I mean, these are things that are like, you know, unless you know, are basically made of money and can just like, yeah, I'm just traveling whenever I want. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like what my life is. It's, you know, it's a lot of, like Mike, you were just saying, like, how do you have time to do all these bands? Well, you know, the roles that I have are different with the bands. So, you know, I'm not doing the same thing with every band. So, but that allows for that kind of, you know, that kind of lifestyle. Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't trade any of this stuff. I had, you know, a lot of great experiences and a lot of great places with a lot of great people because of this whole thing.
So you
visiting those countries, I mean, it's just like a once in a lifetime opportunity in of itself, which is pretty sick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, and to be paid to go there and like not pay for your travel. I mean, come on, you know, it's not exactly,
you can't beat it.
You can't even go to these places right now, but like, you know, I frequent traveler. I'm constantly just looking up airfares like, hey, what would it cost me to go to New Zealand or Australia, or if I wanted to go over to, you know, Germany or wherever, you know what I mean? And like, the prices are never cheap, you know, it's like, oh, okay, you know, and that's like economy, you know, like I'm not even looking at business class or first or anything like that, so
yeah,
it's like, oh, $30,000, cool, well, see you never, you know.
So you brought something up. You mentioned, and this is really interesting to me, talking about the age out rule, how you get to peak form. For most people, like, you peak at 20, 21, where you're comfortable in the activity and your performance ability, and just you're comfortable in this zone, and then they just kind of kick you out. Yeah. So do you think maybe the age out should be increased by a year or two, or do you think it's good where it is? Are you a fan of it at all? Because Winter Guard has no age out for indoor color guard. Yeah. Like, that's none whatsoever.
I mean, I think that's a tough question. I mean, I think the color guard thing is really cool. I think it's unique. I think it would be, you know, it would be cool if the age limit was maybe a little bit higher than it was. You know, maybe people had an extra year or two to do it. I guess the question is, like, if that was the case, would people do it? You know what I mean? Because it's not like it's free to march. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you have to pay fees, and, you know, every year it seems to be more expensive to do it.
And it definitely does kind of line, really, I guess, with life. I guess it does, like, kind of line up with life, like, oh, kind of graduating college-ish, and like maybe getting ready to. But kind of I think there would definitely be some that would take advantage, but not the majority.
Yeah, I mean, like, for myself, for instance, like if not now, like, I wouldn't, if somebody said, like, okay, WGI percussion or DCI percussion or DCI whatever, we've lifted the age limit and anybody can march. Like I don't think I would go and do it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't march.
I
Not
would not.
now, you know, but like as a 22-year-old or a 23-year-old, I probably would have. You know, especially with WGI, because I actually never marched in WGI. Like I said earlier, my high school didn't have a program, and in the area at the time when I was in high school, like it just wasn't as big, you know, like the WGI scene was nowhere near what it is now. I mean, the WGI thing has just grown so much, you know, in not only 10 years, but like 15 years. I guess I said that backwards. Not only 15 years, but like it's less. Like I feel like every year this thing grows, you know, in terms of especially the design, you know, and what people are doing with their programs. But like I wasn't exposed, and by the time I was almost aging out, you know. And then at that point, it was like, okay, if I want to do WGI, I'm gonna have to really travel, you know. Like Rhythm X was just starting, kind of at the time, 02, 03, somewhere in there, right?
03, I believe, was the first year.
Yeah, like to get to them, that would have been drive all the way across Pennsylvania, and then, you know, whether they're rehearsing in Dayton or Columbus or wherever, like that's still at least to the middle of Ohio, or almost all the way across Ohio. You know what I mean? It's a long way. And I was just so invested in the drum corps thing, you know, so it just wasn't a priority for me. And also proximity, you know, and United Percussion wasn't really what they are now, you know, so that wasn't even really on my radar. At that time, I think they were two different groups. They were like Riptide and I can't even remember, but you know, United came.
Imperial Dynasty.
So yeah, I was just really into the drum corps thing. But like, if the age limit was different and I was back then me, I think I for sure would have tried to do at least a winter or two, if not maybe one more drum corps summer. I don't know. It's kind of easy, I guess, to say that now, but I definitely know that I wouldn't do it now.
For
sure.
I would not. I don't think my body could do it now.
Being a staff member, and like I'm way too adult now to like want to put a drum back on and not get paid to wear the drum. You know what I mean?
You hold it and I'll play on it.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like if I'm wearing a drum right now, like I'm gonna get paid to do it. So
for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, Evan and I have debated about that whole age out thing multiple times between the two of us and various guests we've had on here, and I think, like you said, some people would do it, but would enough people do it to where it could end up to be a situation where the entry point for new people would just get pushed later because enough people would stick around longer. So it would just make it, most people don't start till you're 19. So you end up only getting 3 years or 2 years anyway for most people on average. So it's who knows? I don't think it would be that,
right.
But you never know. It's just an interesting thought experiment to think about.
Yeah, I think it just depends. You know, it really depends on the person. And then Evan, you were kind of alluding to this too, like where you're at in life. You know, to kind of bring this up, actually, with the coronavirus thing, DCI and WGI have extended, right, the age limit for a year.
Yep.
But you know, as great as that is, like, is everybody that's eligible gonna be able to do it, or do they even want to do it? You know what I mean? Like a year of time, as short as that seems in the grand scheme of time, a lot goes on in a year. You know what I mean?
Especially
like
when you're 21, 22.
Yeah, exactly. Like things change, man. You know, like for I just moved. You know what I mean? Like I'm actually lucky that drum corps didn't happen because I moved from my house into an apartment like during what would have been moving. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be at moving. I can't move. You know, like so. Yeah. Anyway, case in point is just like stuff changes. You know, things change. You gotta roll with the punches, as Colin would say.
Yep.
If I had to guess, I would say that less than a third of people will take advantage of their bonus or like extra year. Just throwing out a random percentage, or fraction. But
that's probably a fair guess. But I think a couple groups, like the group of members, are going to get together and go, all right, let's do this again. Because, for example, the Bluecoats were going to have a snare line this summer of all vets. Like there wasn't going to be a single person in that snare line that hadn't marched Bluecoats before. It would not surprise me if that group all decides collectively, yep, let's make this happen.
we're going to do it again. Yeah. I mean,
Run them back.
and
Yep.
that's super cool. You know what I mean? Like if I was in that snare line and that was the case and we had the opportunity to, you know, kind of get a free pass again, like I would be down.
Yeah, I probably would too.
Sorry, go ahead. You just cut out a little bit.
I was just saying, hit up the group meet. All right, guys, we're running it back. Here we go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I know for Boston, you know, we're basically the membership of 2020, you know, is locked in for 2021. I mean, obviously I say that now, you know, who knows what's going to happen, but, you know, we've been having some Zoom calls and we've got something in the works that's going to release at some point this summer. I'm not sure if it's going to be before July or once into July, but we're all pretty excited about, you know, putting it together and it's just cool to see the membership, you know, and hear Colin, and we've got a great board of directors, you know, that pops in on the call, and Chris Holland, the director, comes in. The support is just through the roof, which is really great. And I think it's important that the members see that too, but like everybody's just, you know, as bummed as we all are that this isn't, you know, our normal drum corps thing isn't happening. It's nice to still have something, you know what I mean? And like, you know, have an outlet to produce something, especially with technology these days. I mean, you guys see these, like every day you scroll through your phone and it's just like these tiled videos, compilation videos of people playing, you know, and it's just, it's feel good stuff. You know what I mean? It gives you something that you miss, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So we're excited about doing that. I know that like all the Boston crew is really excited about it too. So actually, I don't know that anybody knows that. So I'll give you a little inside knowledge there.
Oh, a little knowledge drop, a little bomb drop.
You heard it here first, folks.
Stay tuned. Boston Battery coming at you. 2020. It's coming late June or sometime July.
Nice.
Whoever's doing the editing.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, right.
I'm looking at the list of topics that Evan sent out before we all kind of got together on this call, and I think we've hit everything. Evan, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think we got through the good meat of everything. I'm sure we could always tell stories for hours, but we won't tie Zach up too much.
Yeah. So let's go ahead.
Not like I'm doing a ton right now at 10:24 p.m. on a Monday night.
Truth.
For sure.
I'm sure I'd still be like coming off the field. Oh, it's 10:24. We'd probably be done by this time. I'd probably be going to hang with staff somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. For an apple juice or a glass of milk or something.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Just exactly that. But all right, let's close this thing out. So thanks everyone for hanging around this long. If you have, I'll reiterate the spiel from the beginning. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode. Like, comment on the video or the episode. Hit us up on patreon.com/agedoutpodcast for any kind of financial support you want to give us. And Zach, this has been amazing. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Dude, it's been great. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to kind of just rap about this stuff. And obviously, you know, I can see Evan right now, but you know, just fun to talk about it. You know, it's like I said, it's, you know, not having it, it's like a nice little outlet to kind of reminisce about some things and get a little bit of the feels, you know, in some way a little bit. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Nope.
Yeah, man. We appreciate you.
So we'll see everybody in a couple weeks.
Peace.
See ya.